You can never be too careful. There's a lot of sick people out here. Lookout is currently streaming on Tubi. It was directed by Stefan Colson and written by Brandon Cahella and features a woman named Melissa, played by Megan Carrasquillo, who decides to leave her life behind, including a man named Jake, because she just wants to get away from the big city, go into the forest to while away the night and day, and sit up in a lookout fire tower in a movie called Lookout. Oh my, oh may. Well, she just keeps on looking, but finds more than she could have ever bargained for. Lookout. Look out, look out for the impending doom. Was that a really good rendition of that song? No, it fucking wasn't. But nevertheless, you can't just have one person in this, so there are a couple other campers. There's a little bit of a mystery. We actually start with something that's almost a bit of a spoiler in the beginning, and then we go back to the beginning, where we have 4 days, and you know that because we have fancy graphics. We start with day 4, then we go back to day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and there we are. There really isn't a lot to dive into as far as spoilers. I will say the cast does the best they could, and there certainly was some thought put into this. The problem is, the film really is just 25 to 30 minutes worth of material that could have been put on a VHS, anthology. And I don't mean an actual VHS tape, unless you want to do that. I don't even think they still make VHS tapes. I mean the seemingly never-ending anthology of VHS horror movies. It is what it is. I didn't mind it at first, but it ultimately just bored me. There are a couple spikes of like, okay, that wasn't that bad, but really, a lot of it just kind of bored me to tears. That being said, cast did what they could, and it was what it was. There are certainly far lower quality movies. There at least seems to be effort put into this, but you can watch it for yourself and decide. I'm going to get into spoilers, though, very quickly. So 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So we start off with day 4. We have Ethan, played by Trent Culkin. I don't think he's any relation to the other Culkins. I could be wrong. He could be a distant cousin, for all I know. He finds somebody tied to a tree that is later identified as Skeeter, who was a hunter. And then, basically, we go back to day 1. We get Melissa driving around a whole bunch. Runs into a few hunters, led by a guy named Dale. Dang, oh man, no, not that kind of Dale, not that. I know that's Boomhauer. Work with me here. And warns her, there are a lot of sick people out here, but just wait till next week before hunting. Okay, no problem. And it's her first day. It's mi dia primero. It's like, quack, quack, quack. Yeah, that's how we're just going to go with it. So, she ends up getting to the tower late. There's a guy named Billy. Don't be a hero. Damn it, Billy, why you keep doing that? And she ends up being late, so Edgewood, not Edgewood Studios, we're not going Time Chasers here, or Icebreaker. He ends up, I don't actually think that's the inspiration for the character. I could be totally wrong, though. So she ends up basically whiling away the hours, talking to a man named Roy, who's a nice ranger, and basically just figuring out, ways to handle her life, because she left a guy named Jake behind. Could have been a bad relationship. She may have just wanted to get away. Maybe he was a cheater. Maybe she was a serial, art dealer that stole stuff from, great museums and escaped into the goddamn woods. I don't know. We don't really find out much. And eventually she finds a lady that has severe burns on her legs and is bloody, and she ends up taking her back to the ranger station. Edgewood shows up and basically takes her and says, well, you're just supposed to watch for fires. You're just supposed to do this stuff. By the way, we are on day 2 at this point because nothing really has happened. And even though I think Edgewood appreciated it, you need to watch out for fires. And apparently this was filmed at a campground in Arizona, so yeah, you probably need to. And she keeps meditating as a way to, I guess, atone for whatever, or because we needed to pad this movie out more. So, there are weird rocks in a pouch that was found, and the old lady was also, or older lady, she wasn't really old, she wasn't ancient, it wasn't like she was around when Prohibition had been, implemented. But she says, I don't have it. So then Skeeter, who apparently is really good with a crossbow, that's important later on, he finds something and then ends up a little bit off. Ethan then shows up and is talking to her and is seeing some weird stuff at the campsite, but Ethan just showing up out of nowhere, a little bit odd. Roy then talks about his wife, who was a psychiatrist. She's no longer there. They used to come out to the woods a whole bunch on vacation. She talks about how, she is running away from something because it was mentioned before. You're either running from something or you're chasing something. That's important here. Day 4. She ends up with a trap on her foot. Ethan helps, and then Ethan suddenly mentions, let's go back to your tower. I didn't tell you I was in a tower. No tower, just a bridge. Why aren't I notified about these things? And basically, Ethan is possessed by something. It is some kind of alien entity because an asteroid came down like about 22 minutes into the movie. You kind of can figure that out by just looking at the fact that this is, this falls under the sci-fi subgenre or genre. And yeah, we get the 200s from before. Skeeter's tied to the goddamn tree. We get some fights that look, admitted, I know that they probably just had a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of light, and a limited amount of time to shoot this thing. But come on, don't do shit if you can't make it look... It didn't look absolutely terrible, but it looked kind of high school play-like. I was in a few high school plays with fights and about the same quality, but it is what it is. There was a cool moment of holding this car in place and pulling the door off conveniently. He just ripped the door off its hinges. And you gotta shoot him in the heart, apparently, I guess. I guess it works the same as fucking vampires. So, Dale says, I told you there were some sick people out there. He goes back to their campsite, gets, or is gonna get Skeeter, and then the fights happen. And then basically Skeeter ends up, not doing all that well because he's possessed by whatever the fuck this thing is. Ethan ends up killing Dale. And Skeeter can't crossbow him, so Ethan just stabs him a whole bunch with it. We know that because we hear the sounds, but they couldn't afford to show it. And then she goes back to her tower. Roy shows up, and Roy is instantly sent over the goddamn top to the floor, just like Kerry Von Erich in the 91-92 Rumbles, except I think Roy had both of his feet. And then she had the axe, by the way. The axe was featured in the poster. And she ended up axing Ethan in the neck. Roy's somehow still alive. This black goo stuff pours out of Ethan and ends up in Roy, but he's not doing all that well. And this embryo, this entity, whatever, cannot survive. And the stuff was also found in the lady's tent, so it's whatever it is. It's trying to collect some stones, some rocks, because there were some rocks found earlier. Moon rocks. Oh, wow. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it right there. They take her back to civilization. Billy is back to do his post after being gone for only a few days. Touches the goo, and then suddenly it's leaking out his goddamn nose, and he is back. And better than ever, I guess. That's Lookout. It just... I didn't hate it. I just was bored by it. That's really what it comes down to. It gets an F just because of the boredom. It was what it was, though. Agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rentlin. Until we go to the Lookout Tower to look for alien specimens again, happy trails to you.